Hello, I am Christian Patouraux. I'm the CEO and founder of Kacific Broadband Satellites, and I would like to talk to you how our company bridges the digital divide by bringing affordable, high-speed, and accessible internet to Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Currently in Southeast Asia and the Pacific and in Asia at large, about 20% of people have access to affordable and usable internet. If you look at the slide, you'll see that in some places you have as little as 12% of the population that has access to internet. Therefore, Kacific has embarked on a mission many years ago to launch a satellite, a special satellite specifically designed to provide high-speed, low-cost internet, and has raised $237 million, supported by development credit funds such as the Asia Development Bank and Guaranco, and has built a satellite, or rather commissioned a satellite built by Boeing. The satellite was launched on a SpaceX rocket at the end of 2019, and is also supported by a ground infrastructure produced by ST Engineering from Singapore. So why launch a satellite to connect remote and rural areas that are typically the areas where the internet is not available? And why not just connect all these places via fiber? Well, it has to do with the population density and the terrain and the remoteness of these pockets of population and pockets of demand. Very quickly, when you try to connect a village that may be distant by a few tens of kilometers from the core infrastructure, the core fiber, you have to pull a thread of fiber to connect that village. And that village may only have a few hundreds, a few thousand, but very often a few hundred people living in there. That would not be able to justify the cost of infrastructure, the cost of fiber to connect that village. The cost of fiber can be easily as high as $1 million, whereas the village may only be able to generate a few $100s per month. So simply not possible to justify a heavy terrestrial infrastructure to connect those remote villages. And that's where the satellite technology is the right place to go in order to connect those villages. Satellite technology has evolved over the last 2 decades to transform itself from a technology that was mainly doing big trunking line telephony or broadcast to a technology that can actually deliver broadband to individual premises or individual villages. And by doing so, you actually do away with any terrestrial connection between the core fiber and those villages. The satellite can reach any place, anywhere within its coverage for the same cost, regardless of the terrain or the remoteness of the community. So Kacific One was launched, as I said, in December 2019. It is called a high throughput satellite. It's the first of its kind in Asia and the Pacific. It uses Ka band, so it's a very high frequency spectrum band that enables the extraction of very high level of signal of bandwidth, or rather megabits density out of the satellite signal, and therefore allows to connect people with broadband at an affordable cost, because that satellite produces so much bandwidth for a given cost of the satellite and the whole project. The satellite reaches 25 countries across Southeast Asia and the Pacific from on the north west side of its coverage. It covers Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and on the south east side, it covers as far as French Polynesia. So a very, very large area that is covered by this satellite. And the two main markets, I would say, that are consuming a lot of the bandwidth from the satellite at the moment are Indonesia and the Philippines. But we also have another 20 plus countries that we are connecting, some as little as I will show you later, places like Tuvalu that only have about 10,000 people living in that country. Thanks to Kacific, the price of broadband has reduced in many places by more than 50% on a before and after basis, and we are still driving the cost of bandwidth, of high quality bandwidth, down in many regions where the satellites, our technology, and our partners helping us on the ground are deploying further. Kacific has a very strong social development value. Ever since we started our service after the launch of our satellite, we demonstrated a great value for economic development. We're connecting currently thousands of little small and medium enterprise, especially in rural areas. And remember that these small and medium enterprises are the engine of the economic development of those remote areas. Without connecting those small and medium enterprise, there wouldn't be jobs for the citizen and the population in those remote areas, and therefore you wouldn't be able to sustain their development or their livelihood at large. We also have a very strong education angle. At the moment, we are connecting with our satellite more than 650 educational institutions, be it primary school, colleges, secondary schools, even universities, some as little as about 50 students in remote areas, in villages, and some as large as a few thousand students. The importance of connecting education is, first of all, an up-to-date curriculum, but also the ability for the villages to keep their kids longer in the village by continually upgrading their curriculum and making sure that the quality of education delivered in villages is of the adequate standard before the kids would have to leave their village to go and study in more central places. So there is a very strong importance in connecting those villages and the educational institution in those villages, because, for instance, it allows a better gender equality by keeping girls and boys longer in the villages and not just sending boys to higher education and keeping girls in the villages without education. So we have really observed that advantage. We also have a very strong angle on healthcare because we are connecting more than 150 facilities, healthcare facilities at the moment with our system, and especially in the context of COVID, we've been able to connect a lot of these places and help governments be more in touch with their healthcare network, especially in countries that have a highly disseminated population. In terms of affordability, we did a little study on to see how we were faring with the 2% ITU and UNESCO affordability target for 2025 as a percent of the GNI per capita. You can see that we in Indonesia, Philippines, Papua New Guinea, even where, especially Papua New Guinea, where the income is generally at a lower level. We have been able to easily meet the requirement from ITU and UNESCO by meeting only 1.4% of the GNI per capita for 1 gigabyte, which really is, again, a great engine for development if you provide an affordable connectivity. Our business model is actually of two kinds. We have a wholesale model where we sell to telcos, but we also have a package bandwidth. In other words, we sell almost retail, but franchise retail broadband that we sell through internet service providers. And by doing so, we have a very large footprint across the value chain. We can address directly the needs for the telcos that themselves have a network that distribute the bandwidth throughout that network, and therefore having almost an immediate access and reach to all the populations. But in some cases, the telcos have no presence, or they find that their presence is not economically viable in some regions. And when that happens, our package bandwidth actually we partner with a local ISP and we sell these package bandwidths. In other words, it's just selling plans of broadband, one plan at a time, to ISPs that then on-sell that to the market directly to end users. And we have observed that we actually have a great footprint commercially across even very remote regions where telcos would not alone have the right footprint. The market applications that we have are multiple. We have, of course, as I said already, education and healthcare, economic development, but we also do disaster response. I'll show you an example about that. We also do government services. We connect, for instance, courts of justice, police stations, post offices, and we also do 3G, 4G and 5G mobile backhaul. That means connecting a mobile tower with a small satellite antenna at the foot of the tower, and that tower would then repeat the signal and provide 4G even in very remote locations where otherwise it would be very expensive to pull a fiber or send a microwave signal to a very remote location. So here are some examples of what we have achieved. For instance, with our packaged bandwidth, we have sold our services directly to a number of schools and community sites in the Philippines. So you can see, even in very remote areas, that, in very ethnic areas of the country, we've been able to make a difference directly, especially in the education sector in the Philippines, but also simply by connecting community centers in remote islands of the Philippines around Mindanao or Palawan, which are very fragmented topologically in a large number of islands. We've also addressed the healthcare. You can see how those are press articles that have come out in the press. Those were in Vanuatu, for instance, in the Pacific Islands, very remote places, very difficult to access, very difficult terrain, very low infrastructure. And so our system has been directly responsible for saving lives of young mothers, of infants, of children who have been hurt and needed to be evacuated, and that would otherwise have taken much longer to evacuate. And thanks to our system, evacuation was allowed very, very promptly after accidents. We also very much present in disaster recovery. As you can see here, there's been a number of recent events throughout the Pacific. The region where we operate is called the Ring of Fire, which has a lot of volcanic activities, a lot of earthquakes, of tsunamis, as well as a number of tropical cyclones. For instance, we have been able to respond in 2020, around April 2020, when Cyclone Harold, it was a Category 5 tropical cyclone that hit Vanuatu, and we were the first to respond and reconnect the country, and in order to be able to assess the situation, give situational awareness to the emergency responders that could then target their efforts at the most hit part of the country. Even some of our antennas there were able to withstand. They were a little bit sheltered behind a wall, but they were able to operate throughout the hurricane, throughout the tropical cyclone, and stayed connected for some of them almost the entire night, where the cyclone was at its highest. So it was a great test of resilience of our system, actually. We also have a number of products that we have developed for emergency response and disaster recovery. One is what we call the comms trailer. It's a trailer that can be pulled on a truck in a location where there is no more connectivity, and the system deploys quickly an antenna, a Wi-Fi system on a telescopic mast, and can provide a wide area coverage of Wi-Fi that can be used as a center for the emergency responders to exchange awareness videos or information with the coordination center. We also have the comms box that we have already started deploying in some locations, which is an all-inclusive communication center that can be deployed anywhere in the satellite coverage, can be airdropped, can be brought by boat or by truck. And as soon as it opens, it has solar panel, a self-pointing satellite system, and a Wi-Fi system, and again provides a turnkey communication center for emergency responders. We also at the moment developing another solution which uses the Internet of Things that will allow to use our dishes or the small satellite antenna to actually repeat a signal much further, up to about 40 or 50 kilometers around the system, in order to create alerts in case of impending disasters. Or to again gather situational awareness, locations of people, or simply a very small narrow band type of information, in order to again provide better and more focused response to disasters. Of course, this can also be used generally for agriculture enhancement, and for banking system, etc. We could also put that at ATMs in order to develop the infrastructure in those remote villages. Give you an example here of what we've done in Vanuatu. In Tuvalu. We have partnered with the Tuvalu Telecom Corporation, and we have deployed in a countrywide network and coverage. So the government, which is the parent company of that telecom company, has taken 100% of the satellite coverage and satellite bandwidth around Tuvalu. And we've deployed a number of solutions for their ferries, for instance, so to equip their inter-island ferries with our satellite solution. We've also deployed very large antennas to connect a high-speed, what we call trunking system, so a very large amount of bandwidth to connect their capital city, and also a number of smaller antennas in their outer island. And thanks to that, we have connected key community hubs of schools and medical center, and again, driven the prices, the internet prices down by 50% in just a year. Well, that's all I have. Well, thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I hope you found it useful, and I will see you at the TIE. Thank you very much.